Defense Council will update us from the Antiterrorist Operation Zone. Шановні пані і панове, зараз оперативну інформацію з місць проведення АТО полковник Андрій Лисенко, речник інформаційного центру РНБО. Прошу, пане Андрію.
Good afternoon. Yesterday, after a three-day-long battle, the Ukrainian units who were protecting the state border on the southeast of Luhansk region have come out from the encirclement and joined the main forces of the anti-terrorist operation in the vicinity of Savur-Mohyla and Ambrosivka. During this operation, our units have more than once been shelled upon from the territory of the Russian Federation. They also broke through the positions of terrorists, and there was an exchange of fire not far from the settlement of Uspenka, where heavy losses were inflicted upon the terrorists. 44 times anti-terrorist operation forces exchanged fire with enemy in the vicinity of the following settlements. Now you hear the names of the towns and villages. So as you see from the names of these towns and villages, our military are narrowing this circle around the terrorists and are moving forward. Yesterday in the vicinity of Yednakivo, the militants have shot down the plane MiG-29, and the pilot made everything possible in order to bring the plane as far as possible from living blocks. He is alive, and there is a search going on for him. Yesterday at 6:40 p.m., the terrorists fired at the sanitary helicopter Mi-8, which was bringing the wounded from the zone of the anti-terrorist operation. According to all international laws, firing upon such helicopters is banned. They have all the special signs that are impossible not to see. The crew made a forced landing. 3 pilots are wounded. At the moment, they are all in medical institutions on the territory controlled by the Ukrainian armed forces. I emphasize that all the weaponry that is used to shoot down our planes is delivered from Russia. Here you see the photos of an arsenal seized by our military in the vicinity of Krasnohorivka. This is a handheld grenade launcher where they have demolished the name of the country of the production, but the serial number is there. And in connection with this, especially cynical are the statements of the Russian Federation about the necessity of humanitarian help to terrorist organizations. On these photos, we very clearly see what Russia means when they talk about humanitarian help. Terrorists, together with the armed forces of the Russian Federation, are continuing to shell and fire upon the positions of the anti-terrorist operation forces and our bodyguards. Yesterday in the border point Milove of Luhansk region, 3 representatives of the OSCE mission were working. Yesterday, after the international experts returned to the territory of Russia, the border checkpoint and the settlement in the vicinity were twice shelled upon from grenade launchers and mortars. We have to deal not with militia, but with well-trained subversive agents. We now can quote the explosion of 2 cars of the State Bodyguard Service of Ukraine. And yesterday at 5:45 p.m. in the vicinity of Krasny Luch, Luhansk region, we observed the deployment of 15 Grad batteries. During the last 24 hours, our bodyguards have seen 5 Russian drones that broke the airspace of Ukraine in the vicinity of the port Mariupol and also in the direction of Armansk, Chervony Chaban in Khersonsk region, Genichesk and Berdyansk, Zaporizhia region. You see the drones that have broken the Ukrainian airspace now. Yeah, it is approaching. Five Ukrainian officers remain on the territory of Russia. They are charged with false accusations on the assistance of Ukrainian side. A general consul of Ukraine in Rostov-on-Don was allowed to see Ukrainian officers, and the situation is now under his personal control. Ukraine does everything possible to protect its citizens and return them home. Yesterday, the terrorists continued to cynically fire from heavy weaponry upon the residential blocks. For instance, on the outskirts of the village of Maryanivka, Starobeshevsky Rayon, during the artillery shelling, the cafe Agdam was hit by a shell and a lady died there. In the village of Vasilievka, Yasenuvatar district, and in Snizhne, as a result of shelling from the territory controlled by the militants, private houses were hit by shells and the residents of those dwellings died. At 9:30 p.m. in Donetsk, the terrorists fired artillery shells at the Central Clinical Hospital number 1, and the driver of the ambulance died and 3 more are wounded. Also, they were firing in Shakhtarsk, in Ilovaisk, where 5 civil persons were wounded. Terrorists continue robbing local residents. Yesterday in Yanakievo, a private shop was robbed by 4 armed terrorists who stole 360,000 hryvnia. Yesterday, at one of the highways in Volnovakha district, 50 meters away from the road checkpoint, the military stopped a suspect car, Deolanos. The driver escaped, and then it turned out that the car was packed with explosives, ammonal, which equals to almost 130 kilos of TNT. This is the explosive used in mines. Also, there were booby traps in the car. The military have partially defused the explosives, and then the car was utilized. We address the civilian population and you journalists. When you discover an explosive device, you have first to mark the place where it is situated, limit the access to it, and inform law enforcement bodies about this. Then demining teams will come and defuse those devices. This has to be done necessarily because different dangerous objects attract, first of all, kids, and they can be the first who will be hit. Please pass on this information to children so that they know that they cannot touch it, and if they see such things, let them call their parents. Yesterday, NATO General Secretary Anders Fogh Rasmussen said that NATO is stopping its cooperation with Russian Federation because of the military aggression in the eastern parts of Ukraine. He also says that the participation of Ukraine in NATO military trainings is possible. The press secretary of the White House, Josh Earnest, said that the USA is against the introduction of the Russian peacekeeping force in the east of Ukraine. He also emphasized that destabilizing actions on the part of Russia, illegal annexation of Crimea, deployment of troops along the Russian-Ukrainian border, and movement of heavy weaponry from the Russian side through Ukrainian border in order to support terrorists led to the sanctions introduced by the USA and their allies and partners. Deputy Minister of Finance of U.S. David Cohen said that the American authorities are ready to introduce additional sanctions against Russia because of the situation in Ukraine, and he also emphasized the possibility of steps of the USA to respond to the limitations introduced by the Russian Federation. Yesterday on the phone, Petro Poroshenko and Angela Merkel agreed on coordination of efforts for multilateral talks at the summit level in order to realize peaceful plan. The Norwegian Foreign Minister Børge Brende said that the government of Norway plans to conduct consultations with the parliament on joining the new package of sanctions of EU against Russia. The economic sanctions against Russian Federation started to work, which is testified to by the fact that over the last 24 hours, 3 Russian banks asked the federal government of Russia to help with 200 billion rubles. In particular, Rossельхозbank, Внешэкономбанк, and Gazprombank is trying to sell its privileged shares for 40 billion rubles. Yesterday, the government of Canada sent to Ukraine the first batch of non-lethal military equipment in order to help Ukraine in protecting its borders against Russian aggression. The cost of the help is $5 million, and it is composed of helmets, night visors, body armor, first aid kits, sleeping bags, and tents. And as Prime Minister of Canada emphasized on his official web page, this is just the first of the series of planned deliveries. Today, on the 8th of August, at the request of Lithuania, the Security Council of the UN will hold an open sitting at 5 p.m. Kiev time.
During the last day, how many casualties are there? And terrorists say that Ukrainian armed forces cut the roads between Snezhny and Krasny Luch, and also captured Panterimuk and cut the road between Makeyevka and Goloku. Can you confirm that information? Thank you. We see that propaganda of terrorists is not able to argue with us and compete, so they do some of our work for us. Yes, it's true that Ukrainian armed forces came to some towns, captured some of the towns, and it's not possible to stop them. If they are ready to give up, we will accept that. As to casualties, during the last days, seven military men died. Eight border guards and 79 were wounded. That is related with when paratroopers paratroopers got out of that trap, and terrorists and Russia was shelling them heavily. Thank you. As to losses among civilians, we don't have precise data. We cannot provide that because civilians who suffer now, they are on the territory which is under the control of terrorists, so we cannot count those casualties. We'll do everything possible for that territory to be liberated as soon as possible, for civilians not to suffer because of that. About seven military men and 8 border guards. This is when Brigade 79 were moving out, broke through the trap. And the situation in Zaporizhia, obviously, when a major killed, a drunk major killed a soldier. Thank you for that question. The answer for that, I don't have an answer for that question. I hope I get it. Further, what will happen to for those who returned from Russia, and what happens to Brigade 79? They moved to the special location for retreat and psychological and medical assistance is provided to them. What about Donetsk? Who is shelling in Donetsk? We prepare preparation of liberation of Donetsk, but the quarters of Donetsk are shelled by terrorists from their positions. Yesterday, General Counsel was alerted to our 5 arrested officers in Russia. Is there information? He spoke to them, right? Were they interrogated? Were they beating them to get information? We have information that yes, they demanded them to confess that they were shelling the territory of Russian Federation on purpose. But they have not accepted that. But despite all the norms, they started a criminal case against them. What's their condition? Physically, they didn't torture them physically. They can give an answer. They can work with lawyers, and no, that assistance is provided by Ukraine. From Donetsk, they informed that guerrillas killed the crew from Russian Grad system. Is there information about breakthrough of equipment to Luhansk region at night? As to activities on Donetsk, I'm not ready to tell you because it's taking place right now at the moment. As to equipment and vehicles, we don't have information that any equipment was moved or vehicles. We don't have that information yet, and we monitor the situation. So we have not received the information from our agents there. Any question? No question. Thank you very much, and he will come again for 5 o'clock.